Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August edition of Tacos Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe it's already August. Where has the year gone, you guys? It's crazy. So, this is our monthly PPC training session. I am Vince Montero, your host for Tacos Tuesday, which is all about total ACOS, which is a metric that we like to talk about here at Helium 10. Not just ACOS when it regards to PPC optimization. So that's why I call it Tacos Tuesday. However, I also love tacos, so there is that. So as we welcome people in, why don't you guys let us know where you're tuning in from? I know we're live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I always like hearing where people are checking in from around the world. So we'll give people a couple minutes to get into today's session, which is going to be all about bulk files. And if you guys are regular followers of this show, last year we had Elizabeth Greene of Jungler on, and she did a presentation about bulk sheets. But there's been a lot of changes, so I wanted her to come back and share that with you guys. But first, before we dig into the content, I always like to answer some questions ahead of time from people that have written in, and maybe there's topics of interest that they would like me to cover in future sessions, or simply questions about the PPC world, which is, of course, big and broad and beautiful. So looks like we've got Oren from Israel checking in. Wow, that's probably the furthest that I've seen someone check in from. Welcome, Oren. And we have an email. Like I said, people can write in ahead of time with questions, and that is ppcama@helium10.com. We'll put it on the screen for you guys. So, or on the comment section at a minimum. Just so you guys know, this is an inbox only email. I keep saying that, and people keep expecting replies to this email. It's just incoming only. So for me to read it and then go through the questions on air, like we're going to do right now. Scott's checking in from where's NH? I should probably know that. So we're going to go through a few of those questions, and then I'm going to bring on Elizabeth Greene, again from Jungler, and she's going to introduce herself. We're going to go through that presentation or answers, or questions and answers with her about bulk sheets. And then afterwards, when we're done, we'll just do regular Q&A. And again, anything related to PPC or Atomic, which is our PPC management solution that I help run here at Helium 10, is open for the floor is open for you guys. So, if you have questions, feel free to ask them during the session, and but I will look at them at the end of the topic and at the end of the presentation that we're going to be sharing with you guys. So let's get those questions up, and we'll start with that. So the first question is from, let's see here. Oh, there it is. From Kim. As a new user with limited experience using Amazon tools versus Amazon's campaign manager, what would you suggest would be the first and most important thing to do with Atomic to optimize the efficiency and the performance of the ads I am currently running? I love this question. This is something that I like to get because it's about Atomic, the tool that I helped build here at Helium 10. And so when people are new to the tool, what I like to tell people to do is, number one, watch our pro trainings. You guys will see more of me. I do the pro trainings that for Atomic. And in that is a session on analytics. And in that pro training on analytics, that's really where you can go and see at a high level all your data. So across your entire account, whether it be at your keyword level or search term level or campaign level, this is something that we made available to you guys. So you can see everything really clearly and with the touch of a button. So on that analytics page, I always direct people to the search term level. So as you guys know, if you're manually optimizing your campaigns, looking at the search terms, pulling the search term report is a regular part of optimizing, right? Because search terms are the lifeblood really of your PPC. It is what the shoppers are actually typing in to then get connected to your keywords and potentially then to your advertising. So taking a look at your search terms is the most important first step when you're trying to look at maybe potentially optimizing your campaigns that have just been uploaded into Atomic. And when you do that, you can really quickly, through some filters, see maybe what search terms are spending that haven't made any sales, and you can quickly make those negative with a click of a button. And also maybe high ACoS search terms. And the great thing about using this tool is that you can look for further, bigger data sets. So within Atomic, you can look up to 2 years. So depending on when you actually joined, your data will be saved for up to 2 years. So Kim, what I would highly suggest again is that analytics page, looking at the search term level and just doing some quick filters on maybe some things that are wasting, and then immediately making those negatives. And then also right after you do that, Atomic will actually do that whole manual process itself. But you do have to make rules for your campaigns in order for Atomic to know the parameters for how to make things or what to look for to make things negative for your campaigns. So again, there's also pro trainings available on that. And there is a pro training specifically on how do I create negative rules for my existing campaigns. So do those steps, Kim, and you should be on the right track with your campaigns within Atomic. All right, next question. Georgie asks, when adding an exact match keyword to a campaign, should you add it as a negative to all other campaigns? So this is kind of hotly debated. Different people have different strategies regarding this, but this is kind of what could be called search term isolation. So if you really want to maybe index for a certain keyword and you're targeting it just in one campaign, then yes, you would want to maybe make it negative across all your other campaigns. If it's not a ranking campaign though, if it's just a keyword that you think might convert for you and you're just looking at getting data, then maybe you don't want to make it negative across all of your other campaigns. So what can happen, and what often happens, is that Amazon might connect that exact keyword maybe exactly in a different campaign, auto campaign, or a keyword campaign that has broad match keywords even. So if it does really well there, for example, in the auto campaign, typically that's going to be at a lower CPC. So for me personally, I'm all about making that keyword manual because obviously it worked in your auto campaign as a search term. But really, I prefer testing the data before making things negative in another campaign. So definitely make it an exact match keyword in a campaign. But if it's doing better in the auto campaign and it's as that exact match, then I don't see the reason necessarily to make it negative in that auto campaign until it stops performing. So in questions like these, my response is let the data guide your decision. Far too often, there's strategies out there that are just kind of guessing or hoping that you might influence the algorithm, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So best practice for me is always follow the data and let that be your guide. So I hope that helps, Georgie. We've got one more question from Muja. If my product sells 1 or 2 every other day organically, would PPC really increase my sales? If so, how do I start using PPC? So this is a pretty broad question, which typically I don't answer, but I wanted to let Muja know, again, Helium 10 is known for its training. One of the things that we are very well known for is our sessions, such as this one here. But we also have, our full FBA course called Freedom Ticket, full of modules that you can get. And I believe that's available at just even our starter plan. So if you are at our lowest tier membership, so definitely check that out. There are a lot of things that you should do and consider before running PPC, such as making sure that your product listing is up to date. So in our FBA course, PPC is actually the last week, or maybe second to the last week in our course. And that is because, again, there's a lot of things that you should be looking at before spending your money on PPC. So the thing that I like to remind people with a question like this is simply PPC doesn't create sales, right? PPC is just the thing that gets people to your landing page. Your landing page is what makes the sales. If that landing page isn't as good or better than your competitor, if the price point isn't competitive, likely not going to make a sale. Now, is that the PPC's fault? No, the PPC did its job. It got the person to your listing. So when looking at questions like these, try to understand PPC isn't the thing that makes the sales. It's just the thing that gets people to your landing page, and your landing page is what needs to make the sales. All right, with that, thank you, Denise, for saying that you love Atomic. Hopefully we'll get to do some Q&A afterwards and include that in here. So we're going to go and I'm going to introduce Elizabeth Greene. She was having some internet issues earlier, so I'm really hoping that that's become a little bit clearer for her. So let's bring her on. Again, we're going to talk about bulk sheet optimizations. Elizabeth, you're clear. I can see you clearly. How are you?
Is it? Oh, good.
Yes.
I found a couple more things I could weed out.
Perfect. So everyone, I just want to introduce Elizabeth Greene. Like I mentioned, she's from Jungler. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Greene, a co-founder of an Amazon advertising agency. So love being on here, love getting to talk about Amazon advertising, which is my favorite subject. And then getting even more niche with that into something called bulk files, which we're going to cover, which is again, it's spreadsheet based. So it's a lot of spreadsheets, but again, one of my favorite topics.
So is the terminology correct? Am I saying should I be saying bulk files instead of bulk sheets?
I don't know. All I know is like if you read the literature, most times it's called bulk. I think they're interchangeable. Honestly,
Okay.
to me, as long as somebody knows what you're talking about when you talk about it, like
Yeah. So as you can see, you guys, I asked that question because I am not the person to ask about bulk files or bulk sheets. From my background, I was a consultant in running PPC, but I actually never used bulk files. So that's why I like to bring on people that do things things that even that I haven't done or had any experience with. So as I mentioned earlier, last year, Elizabeth was on and she shared some information about bulk files. But there's been some changes, Elizabeth, right?
yes, massive changes.
Oh,
No changes like this have happened ever, I think, for bulk files.
okay. So when they first launched, it's been like this forever. And then so 2.0 is really just the first iteration of the originals.
Yeah, so it is an update and improvement for I would say 98, maybe about 80% of things. There's a couple things that it can get a little quirky if you're used to the old format, and I'm sure we'll cover that.
Well, that's a great place to start. So for people that maybe don't have any experience with bulk files, could we share like what the differences are between the old and the new?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're unaware of what we're talking about, as far as bulk files go, it's basically, I like to describe it as your entire ad account inside of a spreadsheet. So it's a great way to, I mean, if your entire ads account is in a spreadsheet, it's a great way to analyze how your advertising is doing and then find things a lot quicker than you can in the interface. But the other thing, and what makes bulk files so powerful, is you can actually make changes to your ad account when you upload a file.
Oh, cool.
So that's why it can get super exciting for those of you with very large accounts and maybe even hundreds of campaigns. A bulk file can be a really great option, and let's be honest,
Yeah.
it's economical. You can just go into your account and download it, which can work out for those of you large sellers who just like to get into the nitty gritty.
So basically, you're saying that bulk files are just really good. Like once you have like this certain threshold of campaigns, you said
Mhm.
100. So once you have a lot of campaigns to optimize, then that's when the ease of use of the bulk files kind of it kicks in. would you
Yes.
suggest that even for smaller accounts, or only those with a large amount of campaigns?
Yeah, so I would say after you get past a handful of campaigns, I still think there's validity in using bulk files to manage. If you're using a tool like Atomic that has a lot of the systems automated for you, then a lot of those systems, Atomic's doing the heavy lifting for you. But if you're still managing manually and you have more than a handful of campaigns, I would say bulk files are going to be a phenomenal option. And then there's a couple new updates with this new 2.0 that actually, to me, bulk files are now the easiest way to do that,
Oh
particularly
wow,
renaming things. So although some of the tools have the options to rename things, honestly, I think it's easier to do it in a bulk file.
awesome! All right, cool. Well, do you have anything to share with us so that we can demo for all these people?
Yeah, definitely. I have a bulk file pull up. So this is like an actual bulk file, although some of the things have been changed, and just the names. But this is the structure you would see if you were downloading and opening a bulk file for the first time. So maybe if anyone has any questions on this or specific things that they want to cover, we 100% can make sure that we cover that. If
Great.
this is like your first time seeing a bulk file, a lot of the old resources when it comes to learning kind of what a bulk file is, how to use it, maybe some of the functions of it, all of that, previous training is still valid. All of those functions that you could do previous, they haven't taken any of those away. The difference is maybe some of the names or some of the columns have changed. I actually, in our prior conversation when we went over like the older format, we covered, pretty extensively where everything was. And then I think we put out a joint blog post on that. And we just put out kind of an updated blog post. And in that one, I actually kind of referenced the old, what the old names were and kind of the changes of those. So that might be something to check out if you're trying to like, okay, what's different between the old and the new format, and then trying to, kind of get the lay of the land.
Awesome.
Yeah. But I would say probably the most pertinent update, and the one that I find trips up a lot of people, is this new operations column. And so that's something I also covered in the blog post, because once you understand the operations column, it makes sense. It's very, I would say, logical in the way that Amazon put it out. So really happy about that. So the way it used to work in the old format is if you went over and say I'm going to change a bid, and so where you would do that is over in the bid column. It used to be called max bid, now they just call it bid, which again, they're getting logical with this, which is appreciated. But what you would do is you would just change the number here in this column, and then you would just re-upload the file. And basically what Amazon did is they took your entire file and then cross-checked it with what was in your current account and said, oh, there's a change here, and then they would apply that change. So one, as you can imagine, it just made the time for the bulk file to be processed like a really long time, because it had to check everything. And then the second thing that could happen is you could like accidentally change a number in the wrong spot and then accidentally make some change in your account. Those two problems are completely eliminated with the update of this new column over here, which is the operations column. So basically what needs to happen is we have to tell Amazon, hey, we want this thing to happen. And depending on what's contained in the operations column, that change will take place on the specific row that you put it in.
So
There's,
it's a little bit
sorry.
like, so for those that are Atomic users, it's a little bit like creating a rule. You're kind of telling Amazon, hey, this thing, do this change. So how many different types of operations are there?
Yeah, so there is three, and there's honestly only two that you need to worry about. The three operations are update, create, and then archive. I don't ever really recommend using archive in the ad console or in a bulk file unless you know what it does and you're 100% confident in that archive. If
100%.
you're slightly unconfident in what you're doing, there's nothing wrong. All of us go through a learning curve. I would just say, just don't worry about archiving. You can always just pause things, and that effectively is going to do the same thing. The only difference between archive and pausing is if you archive it, you can never use you can never use it again. So for instance, if I had a keyword contained in a campaign and I archived it, and I'm like, oh crap, I really wanted to keep advertising on that, I could never actually add that exact keyword in that exact match type to that ad group again, and I can't enable or like turn back on
Yeah.
that particular keyword.
Yeah, for that exact reason, I tell people to avoid archiving when they can, just
Yeah.
pause keywords. Kind of a sideline note, but what is your thought on the art? So I basically only use archive as a feature of negative. If you've added some
Mm-hmm.
negative
Yeah.
targets that you think that maybe you were wrong, those you can archive, because that's really the only way then to open it back up. Does it
Yeah.
work the same way? So for negative, are you able to add that as a negative again?
I know I tested that. You want to hear something funny? So when we talk about nerding out on things in bulk files, like if you wonder if it could be done through a bulk file, I've probably tested it. I just like figuring out if I can make things work. So like technically I shouldn't be able to like enable something that's been archived. I actually tested it through bulk files because again, they're used to make like changes through the accounts. I'm like, can I get around it? No, you can't. It's archived. You can't do anything about it. I tried it. But I think in the upload files, you could actually like select paused for a negative and do it through an upload. So that's kind of funky. I'm trying to remember through the ad console if that's possible. I know I tested it, and to be perfectly frank, I can't remember the answer. And I
Yeah,
wouldn't want to give a wrong answer.
it is something that I've been asked that I haven't tested it myself, and I probably should, but that's the
I'm gonna have to
assumption.
make a note to myself. Go test.
Yeah,
Because that's
the
a good
assumption
question.
is, since for negative keywords, once you add them as negative, really the only function that Amazon gives you is archive.
Yeah.
So naturally, you would assume, which always is bad to do, that if you archive that negative, what you're telling Amazon is, I didn't mean to add this to negative.
Yeah.
So if I need to add it as negative again, please let me.
Hmm.
Probably something that we should test.
Yeah. Definitely. Like I said, it's fun to do those curiosity tests. Like, oh, can I do this? Can I do that? And sometimes you find some cool stuff.
Yeah. All right, cool. So sorry to sideline us a little bit, but I just thought that was an interesting question to ask you. You were going over just the 3 types of operations. Obviously, avoid archive when you can.
Yeah.
So if you use the archive, I'm assuming that's just for archiving keywords in a
Yeah.
campaign, right? It's not for negatives like what we're talking about.
Yeah. So think of it as like anything you can do inside the ad console, you can do through a bulk file. And anything that's not available in the ad console is not going to be available in a bulk file. So for instance, like you don't set campaign budgets at the ad group level. So you're not going to do that in a bulk file. You don't set placements at the ad group level. You don't put keywords into campaigns. You have to put them in an ad group. So things like that, like if you kind of understand like, okay, this is where this goes, this is where this goes inside the ad console, it's going to make sense in a bulk file. It's really just figuring out, okay, so where is this in a column? Which row is this contained on is really what you need to figure out.
Awesome. Anything else we can glean from this sheet?
Definitely. So I definitely can cover the other 2 updates, or not the updates, the other 2 operations that you can, I would recommend using and you will need to use. And this is if you're using a bulk file to make changes. If you are unfamiliar with bulk files and you're just trying to figure them out, I do want to say like you're not going to make any changes to your account until you re-upload that file. So if you would just want to download it, if you just want to open it, say, oh, okay, they were talking about the operations column. This is where this is, or this is where this is. You can download as many of these as you would like. You can open them up. You can just kind of look through the data, and you're not going to harm anything in your account. So if you're trying to get into bulk files, like that's what I did first. I mean, I downloaded one, I looked at this entire thing and went, okay, and then just kind of started to try and figure out what was what. So if you're
So did
learning how
you
to start,
did you go back into your campaigns and like cross-reference, oh, this is the change I made, and did it actually hit?
I think I did that. So it was a lot of testing, and just trying things. And so, like I said before, if you don't put something in the operations column in this particular format, it's not going to change anything in your account. So if you only change one line, so if you only like fill out update on this one row, and I only have create here and here, there's only going to be changes to these 3 lines. So only going to change like 3 small, and in these instance, you're going to see keyword here in the entity column, which is maybe something else we should cover. That's probably once you figure out the operations and you figure out the entity column, a lot more things start making sense.
Right. Yeah, let's go ahead and explain the entity column.
Yeah. So, like we've been talking about, like, so you have your campaigns, and then you have your ad groups inside, and then you have your, your keywords contained within that. There's different kind of like levels in a way. Like if you're looking for the placements, you have to click into another little dashboard. If you want to see the keywords, you click somewhere else. Think of that kind of like an entity. So what the entity does is it basically just tells you like what information is on this particular row. So if I look at the entity column here, which is column B, it was called, no, I can't remember. It had a different header name, but it's still column B. So if you're familiar with the old format, you'll get this right away. But if you notice campaign here, this tells me, okay, so this is a campaign. So everything contained within this row, and I'll just highlight it real quick so we can, just kind of scroll across and see. So we have like ID columns, we have the portfolio ID, so you know how campaigns can be in a portfolio. And like I said, if it's in the ad account, it can be in the bulk file, and then vice versa. So if I see a portfolio ID here, I'm like, oh, okay, so this campaign is in this portfolio. See where it has ad ID, which is like the ad group, and then keyword ID. We don't put like ad groups are not at the campaign. So when you click into a campaign, you only see the campaign. You're not seeing like the ad groups and everything else.
Right.
See the campaign name. We don't have an ad group name because again, the campaign level, you don't set the ad group name at the campaign level. So things like that, or like the start date, start dates are set at the campaign level. So once you kind of understand like, oh, okay, so this row here is everything for this specific campaign. Cool. Okay, so now that I know that, so now that I go through here, I can understand that any information or anything that's filled out in any of these columns is going to be some information about this specific campaign. So you see the campaign name, so it's going to be about SP campaign 1. Now, of course, like naming has been changed. You probably have a better naming structure than SP campaign 1. But you can kind of get an idea of how we might say like, okay, so this is targeting type is manual. Cool. Okay, so this SP campaign 1 is a manual campaign because it's on this line.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what else is new from the previous version? And just so you guys are aware, we do have a blog post from Elizabeth original last year, so you can read that. And then all the stuff that we're going through right now, we have another blog post that's going to be coming out soon. I was hoping for this week, but it's probably going to be next week, so you guys can check that out. But I really wanted just to cover kind of the things that are new. Because again, like Elizabeth shared, if you can take advantage of this, it can maybe streamline some of your functions.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say some of the major updates, definitely the operations column. So I can go over that. I know I've been talking about it, but update and create. So update is, think about if there's something already contained within your ad account and you're like, okay, I want to make a change here. I want to update it. Again, it's very logical. Thank you, Amazon. And then the create function or create operation, is, okay, if something is not contained within my ad account, for instance, a specific keyword is not inside of an ad group, if this campaign is not contained within my account, I want to create it, then you would use the create operation to say, hey, this line needs to be created in my ad account.
Got it. Okay.
And then the other major updates, I would say, a lot of them are just formatting. So there is that. There's been some, actually, I appreciate, as somebody who lives in these files all the time, there are some things that I personally really appreciate. For instance, in the old format, One of the things you might want to look for in your account is anywhere that you have placement percentage adjustments coupled with dynamic up and down bidding. That's something we always go through in new accounts. Because if you're aware, like dynamic up and down bidding can like up to double your bid, and then you stack a placement percentage on top of that, and just the potential bid fluctuations can be pretty high.
Yeah, I just was looking at our questions, and somebody actually did ask the question, can we explain dynamic up and down bidding a little bit more? So why don't you, since you're talking about it right now, why don't you
Yeah.
cover what the three are and what they do?
Yes, definitely. Okay, so a dynamic up and down bidding, like I said before, so if you go inside the ad console and read the literature on it, dynamic up and down bidding says it will optimize for conversions, which sounds amazing, right? And so what it says is if like the algorithm looking at your product determines that a shopper is more likely to make a conversion, or you're more likely to make a sale, Amazon has the possibility to up to double your bid so you can get like better placement in front of that particular shopper. So it's not like on a particular like keyword or anything. It's not going after like a placement on a keyword. It's going after individual shoppers, which again sounds phenomenal, except for there's two kind of issues we run into with this. One is that Amazon is not always going to get it 100% right, especially if it is a brand new campaign. So they might infer that like, oh, you're going to convert better for the shopper, and it might not necessarily be the case. So it's a potential, and it is a dynamic up and down. So they might also like lower it if they determine you're not going to convert when you might have converted. So there is that into it. And then the second potential issue with this, and this is something that like I had a light bulb moment on. I forget, we were in an internal team meeting or something, and from what we have observed is that typically what happens with dynamic up and down bidding is that you tend to get a higher average cost per click. So your bids, you'll kind of see like your cost per clicks rise. And that might result in higher ACoS, which might not be something that you're looking to do. And then what I realized, I was like, oh, that makes sense, is when you select dynamic up and down bidding, Amazon is simply optimizing for a conversion. All they care about is, am I going to convert? There is no, like, they're not taking into account, am I going to convert? And is this going to be at a good ACoS or a good ROAS for the brand? That's not even in the equation. It's just, can we make the sale? So even if you can make the sale, you might have made the sale at a cost that is higher than you would have preferred. So that, I think, is why we see that increase in cost per click. And it can be an interesting bidding strategy to test potentially. I would just say keep an eye on it, and then don't stack it with the placement percentage adjustment.
Yep, good. That is the best answer to that question that I've ever heard. So I hope that answers the question from Acrylic Diva Fine Artist, who asked that question. So to get back to the sheets, are you now saying, or maybe it's always been a possibility, that you can make those campaign dynamic bidding setting changes as well as placement settings
Yes.
in the bulk sheets? And has that always been?
Yes, that was something that was always available.
Okay.
You could always change the bidding strategy in a campaign. Like I said, you can change it in the ad console, so you can change it in the campaign. You could always change placements in the ad console, and in the old format, you could as well. But what I was talking about is it's much easier now to look at your bidding strategy in relation to your placement. So I'm going to go through that real quick. Filters are going to be wonderful when you go through any spreadsheet, but then also bulk files. So I have a filter applied here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this placements column, and I'm going to uncheck blank. So this is just going to show me, hey, where are all my product pages, and then my top of search placements. And you can see like some of these have 0, some of these are blank. This one has 5, which is going to be like a 5%. And what used to happen when you applied this filter in the old format was this bidding strategy column would be blank, because technically the bidding strategy, it's not set at the placement level. So Amazon just didn't include that on the placement rows, which makes total sense. However, what happened if this was blank, then you couldn't see what the bidding strategy was next to your placements.
Okay.
So what you ended up having to do is you would just like have to like select all of this, and then I can see like, okay, so this is my bidding here, so it's down only, and then this part would have been blank. And then you just kind of had to scroll through. It was honestly a bit of a pain. So there's been some like formats recently that I'm like, I really appreciate that.
That's an efficient change.
Yeah. Yeah, so what you would check here is, so these are all down only. This is fixed bids. That would be fine. Like I said, I wouldn't want to stack an up and down with a placement percentage. So like on this row, you can see we have some dynamic up and down bidding, but there's nothing in the placements. And then in these ones, it's 0. So it's like, oh, okay, this is fine. We're good. Because how we talked about before, how Amazon could up to double your bid. But if they say, hey, you're going to convert well for this shopper, oh, and there's a top of search placement, they might say, hey, we want to hit top of search for this particular shopper. And then what you would do is, like, I always give the instance of $1 bid because the math is easy. But you could say, okay, so it's $1 bid, double that, that's $2. But maybe we have 100%, or again, another double on the top of search. Well, then that 2 becomes 4 instead of 1 becoming 2. It's not always going to trigger, but going from $1 bid to a $4 bid is a pretty wild swing. And so you can just end up with some really weird like fluctuations that are a bit hard to kind of optimize around.
To clarify for everyone listening, so we're talking about 2 different bidding settings, which you can both do at the campaign level. Elizabeth explained the dynamic, but there's also placement bidding. So you can actually go and tell Amazon, hey, I want to increase my top of search placements by X percentage, or I want to increase my product pages for your product targeting campaigns by X percentage. So they're 2 separate areas, and they both affect how Amazon adjusts your bids. So in what scenario or what type of strategy or campaign even maybe do you think it's better to use dynamic bidding over placement bidding? Like, how do you use them separately?
Personally, I prefer the placement bidding, mostly because I feel like that one we have a little bit more control over. And then with the placement percentages, you're able to enter, like you can go all the way up to 900%, which is like a 9x increase on your bid. I'm not saying you need to go that high, but you can go as low as like, say if you want a 5% increase or a 10, like you can go very incremental with it, which I'm always a huge fan of, like test incrementally. Instead of like testing with like large jumps. So I do like that aspect of it. I just feel there's a little bit more control. And then again, with the up and down setting, Amazon isn't necessarily taking into account our preferred performance on things. They're not taking that into account with our placements as well. But I feel like there's a little bit more control over the placements. So if I was going to use one, I prefer that.
Agreed. I'm actually in this exact same camp.
Cool.
We do have just a question. I'm just looking at them as irrelevant to what we're talking about. So we do have a question from Chris Avidowski who says, do you even use tools? I'm assuming he means the ads console or any other. Do you use any other tools, or do you just use bulk sheets to manage your accounts?
Yeah, so we do have some tools that we layer on top of bulk sheets in the functionality. And then we do have, sometimes we'll use tools for specific accounts. But for the main part, so the reason why bulk sheets and like I get really excited about them is because if you kind of understand what's capable in bulk sheets, and now we're going even like farther off of like the basics when it comes to like actual programming, things called like macros, you can actually have like full on automations in basically software. Like spreadsheets in general give you a way to build like really scrappy but like pretty intensely powerful software, where you can get super customized. So it's not going to be as sophisticated as Atomic as far as, like nice interfaces, clean graphics, it's easy to navigate, but you can kind of build once you want. So in the beginning, I just kind of had fun building and ended up writing a bit of algorithm that I really like. And so we're just using that.
Awesome. And any other tips or strategies in the bulk files that you can share?
Yes, so let me go through. Um, One great thing actually to probably cover is going to be renaming campaigns and ad groups, or even actually portfolios. So if you're unaware, um, it's kind of tedious to rename portfolios. And if you have like a whole bunch of old portfolios in your account, like sometimes you like intent to put everything into a clean portfolio and you get lost like about halfway through. And so you have like all your old ones that like nothing's really going on with them. But if you have like more than a couple, like clicking into the portfolio, changing the name of it, let's be honest, it's a pain. It's one of
Yeah,
those things that we always intend to get to and never do.
absolutely.
So going through a bulk file, it's going to be really, I mean, like when I say easy, it's probably about as easy as you're going to get.
So easier.
So yes, definitely. So if you notice the tabs down here, Amazon does break this up into like portfolios, sponsor product campaigns, sponsor brand campaigns, and sponsor display. And the reason why is the formatting for all of these is a little bit different. A lot of them, the column names are kind of the same. So once you understand one, you really should be able to navigate the other ones. But again, we're going to be using the operations column and then this portfolio name column. So say I knew that portfolio 2 and portfolio 3, like these are my old ones. These are the ones that I prefer to get rid of. And I'll show you how I like to rename our portfolios. And the reason why I do this is for some reason, I don't know why, you can't delete a portfolio from
Right.
your
And
account.
I was
Unless
just
it's
gonna I was
created.
just gonna ask you about that if you can actually do that in bulk files.
Yes, I wish. I wish. So if I could, the easiest thing to do would just be like, hey, let's go through and delete all the entities, and then we'll just like create a clean structure and we'll call it good. Well, you can't delete them. So instead of like just going through and like creating all new portfolios and then just like having more portfolios in your account, honestly, probably the best thing to do is what I call restructuring. It's just renaming a portfolio and putting what you want into that portfolio. So if you have a whole bunch of old portfolios, but maybe you have a new product that you're launching and you would like to put all of those campaigns there, what I would do is I would just go take that old portfolio. I would just get rid of everything that's contained within that portfolio, and I would just rename it and then put all the new stuff in there. And then essentially, like, it's a new portfolio.
Got it.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. But then going through there, again, to go through and click, if you're just doing that once, like, no problem. If you're doing that, maybe all of these, not using anything except portfolio 1. Well, there's like 25 of them here. So I might kind of have a big mess on my hands. What I like doing, just to kind of get rid of the portfolios, I name them like portfolio X because X
Mm,
is at the end of the alphabet and they're sorted alphabetically.
yeah, I
So
use
it just like
Z.
pushes it down to the bottom.
I
And you
use Z
can't,
for the exact same reason.
yeah, and you
Everything is
can't
Z.
name a portfolio the same thing. So I do X and then I would do like XX and then it's like XXX and so on and so forth is what I would do.
Yeah, and then just so that everyone's aware that just again, if you have a bunch of portfolios, it just pushes it to the bottom of the
Yeah.
left hand menu that you see when you have the portfolios open. So you just know, all the ones
Hmm.
that are X's or all the ones that are Z's are empty.
Yeah.
So one day soon, if anyone from Amazon's listening, then we'll be able to delete those portfolios that we're obviously not using and we're probably never going to use again because we have new ones. So
Yeah. Yeah. And then, if you need a new portfolio, you just go to one of your X portfolios and then you just rename that one and then you just reuse it. That's kind of how we cycle it.
exactly. So there's other things that you can change besides portfolio names too, though, on this.
Yeah, so let me
Or does
finish
each
going
tab
through
have
how you
its?
would do this real quick,
Okay.
because you only got to do one more thing. So all you have to do is you would have to put whatever you want for the new portfolio name in this column here that says portfolio name. And then remember when we said the operations column, so any changes we want to make, we have to put into this operations column before we upload. And as you can imagine, remember I said that anything that you are changing that's already contained within your account. So in this instance, the portfolio is already there. We just need to update them. So you would just put update in all of these rows, and then I could just I would just go through and, you can copy it down. So you would make sure that you have update on all of the rows that you would like to change. And then at this point, you would just go re-upload the file. And then it's going to pretty much instantly happen in your account. If it takes a couple minutes, it might take a couple minutes, but for the most part, it should update pretty instantly.
I would assume, depending on the size of the file that you're uploading, it
Yeah.
will dictate how many.
Yeah.
But if you don't,
again, this operations column does make it quicker.
Got it. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's see. We've got time. Is there anything else specific that you want to share, or do you want to do some Q&A?
If we have Q&A, we can do that, and then maybe there'll be a question on it.
Yeah. So typically, questions that are asked during the session, I like to just put out there so you can answer them as well. So I think let me scroll through here. What's the question that I want to put up here would be, let's see, we already answered Acrylic Diva's question. What about, let's see, Faizan. Questions about the best strategy for launching a product with PPC. So there's a couple parts. And after 2 months, when we get ranked, then how can we scale our sales by decreasing ACoS and increasing sales? So basically, the question is, what do you launching a product using PPC? And then obviously, then how do we optimize it?
Yeah. So let me cover the first question, and then we'll dive into the second one because it might have a little bit of spiel on that.
Right.
But so the first question is launching products with PPC. I will say, if you're going after ranking, I hold no match type in highest regard. I think they all have their place, and I feel like there's no issue in running all of them in your ad account. That being said, I do recognize that there is a very specific advantage in aggressively targeting an exact match when you're going after ranking purposes. Reason being is you can directly control where that ad spend is being allocated. So even if you're getting better conversions or maybe lower cost per clicks on the other match types, that may not extend out. As you kind of increase, they're going to be targeting way more search terms. And so if you're going after ranking, I would recommend running an exact match. I would say that the most important thing to get right in ranking is going to be, what keywords are you targeting? So what you need to do is you need to really assess your business and what you can afford to spend. And there's honestly no right or wrong answer here. You just need to recognize what makes sense for you at this time, and then recognize, depending on how large or small that ad budget is, that will kind of determine how aggressive you can be, and possibly how long it will take you to rank. And again, I think it's much better to say, hey, I can only spend a little bit, so let me target a little bit fewer keywords and maybe not the most expensive ones, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to target the most expensive ones, and then a weekend you say, I can't afford that, and then you just pause everything, because at that point, that ad spend is pretty much just wasted. So
that's when you hear, I tried PPC and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, no, maybe you just tried the wrong keywords. Maybe you tried to be too aggressive. Maybe you were too conservative. So just to reiterate, you would, I'm in the same mindset. So the answer to this question is, what's your strategy? Really, it's like, are you just starting out and you're just collecting data, or are you being very specific and you're targeting, the words that you want to index for? That's a different strategy.
Yeah.
But you definitely, or you wouldn't suggest putting all match types into one campaign. Would you break those up into different campaigns if you're just testing? Okay, perfect. I just want to make that clear to everyone listening, that we weren't saying try all match types in one campaign. You definitely, they all have their place, exactly like Elizabeth shared. You definitely want to put them in different campaigns, because they're going to perform differently, and you'll have better control if they are in different campaigns.
Yeah.
The second part of that question, then, after 2 months, which is cool, because he's saying, hey, after I have data, which is always the best answer for me, as you guys heard me earlier when talking about what would you do if. When we get ranked, then how can we scale ourselves by decreasing ACoS and increasing sales?
Yeah, definitely. So when I said I was going to spiel on this a little bit, I'm talking mostly, and it's not anything against this question, because this is a question that I hear a lot. They want to decrease ACoS and you want to increase sales. When you're talking about strictly the ads, so how you were talking about earlier, when like advertising is paying for traffic. That's really what we're doing. So we're paying for traffic, and ideally that traffic converts. Now, the variables on the ACoS are your spend, which is the cost per clicks multiplied by how many clicks you have. And then on the flip side of that, that is divided. So it's kind of like a division, it's a fraction. It's divided by how many sales you're making from that. Now, the cost per clicks can definitely be 100% controlled. You're like, how high is our bid? How high are we putting on that? 100% controlled by what you're doing in the ads. The sales, while it definitely can be improved by what we discussed earlier, like what are you targeting? How broad is the targeting? How well do I convert on the specific keyword? It also, because we're talking about conversions and sales here, remember the ads are paying for the traffic. So we're paying for those clicks, and we're paying a set amount. That's our spend. And then our sales can be influenced when we're talking strictly ads. Sales can be influenced by what we're targeting, how we're targeting it, where we're showing up at the page. But at the end of the day, that conversion happens on the listing. So oftentimes when you're talking about decreasing ACoS, what that really translates to is I need to decrease bids on things. The issue with that is when you decrease a bid, you will just naturally decrease your visibility. It's like it's this never completely 100% perfect push and pull, because we have our cost per click. So we're like, okay, I can afford to pay this. But if your competitor says, I'll pay double,
Right.
like, cool.
Yeah.
I got somebody who's going to pay double. That's market price. So what you need to figure out is, where do I convert well at a price that I can afford? And that will give you the good ACoS. Now, ideally, those are places that have enough search volume, i.e. traffic. Great way to track that is Helium 10, of course. So where do I have enough traffic that it makes sense for me to spend this? Because, if I drive ranking here, I drive visibility here, there's enough eyeballs on that ranking for me to be worth the cost. So when you get a couple months in, great. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of data you can now play off of. So you can actually use that data to get a better idea of, go into your search term reports. What has good conversion rates? Where am I converting well? What are my shoppers indicating that, they like my product in relation to? And sometimes that analysis will come up with like completely different use cases that you never intended for, but that's what your shopper base is clamoring for. So maybe at that point, you might want to add another infographic, another call out, or something on the listing. So it's not always, yes, 100%. Sometimes in a launch, you'll be running at an ACoS that, if we're being honest, is not sustainable long run, but that's what it costs to push up the page. But once you're kind of there, what you'll need to start doing is just bringing down your ad costs, which is, lowering your bids, potentially lowering your budgets. But again, that can decrease your visibility. So to kind of make up for that, what you're going to need to do is make sure that your organic is ranking well enough to kind of sustain those sales that you've, spent the money to be able to get there. And then if you pull back on the ads and then your listing can't sustain the sales velocity needed to rank there, well, then you're in a conundrum. And so honestly, what's really good to do is just constantly evaluating, just getting really, really specific on the customers. You don't ever want to be in the position where you're like, oh, people just don't like my product. Like, they don't get it. If the market's not getting it, you haven't told them why they should get it. And so maybe
100%. Yeah. And to add to that, just simply, I always tell people, yes, your ACoS might be high, but again, as I talked about when we opened this, what's your total ACoS? Selling on Amazon isn't about what sales you're making from PPC. Selling on Amazon is, what's my total sales, right? So if we do know, and I say this a lot, if we do know that the whole point of ads, or one of the points of ads, even if they don't click on it, is visibility. So the more times somebody sees your ad, your product on that search result page, the more they see it, the more likely they are to click on it later on, and they might click on it organically. So you always have to answer this question as well, on top of everything Elizabeth just said. Is my ACoS high? But yes, okay, it might be, but my total ACoS is, under 15%. So if you're gonna attack that high ACoS, those campaigns, make sure you're then looking, and you can do that really easily in Atomic under our analytics page. We have a product level, and you, with your MWS token, you can easily see and track how is my total ACoS being affected by the changes that I'm making on PPC, because you will see changes, right? Because if you lessen that visibility, if you cut out some of the ads, you're probably going to cut out the potentiality for someone to naturally or organically click on your ad down the line.
Yeah,
All right.
100%.
Cool. All right. So we've got just a few more minutes. So Kim asks, when hiring a new VA, oh, this is an Atomic question. When hiring a new VA, is it typical, or Helium 10 question, is it typical for a seller to grant them full access to Helium 10 account? She gives you props. Always sign up to listen to Elizabeth Greene. She is so easy to learn from. Yes, she makes data fun. I would agree with that, Kim, 100%. And also, yes, you can give full access to a Helium 10 account to a VA. So just do that in your settings or contact customer support, and they can help you with that. Let's see. Yaz asks, which strategy will work better? Dynamic up and down bids. Okay, what strategy will work better if dynamic up and down is giving a high ACoS and a low ROAS? Well, I would say maybe test turning it off. But what do you think, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I would say it depends on what keywords are contained within your campaign. I'm assuming the question was like, what bidding strategy should I use instead of? I'm assuming that's what the question was asking. And so in that case, the two other bidding strategies, if you're unaware, are dynamic down only or fixed bids. And so dynamic down only basically says, like, if you're not likely to convert for the sale, like, we will probably like lower your bid, so you just won't have to pay for that particular ad auction. So the potential is that you may not have as many impressions, but we expect a lower cost per click. If you're more profit conscious, then that might be a good option. The other option is fixed bidding. And so contrary to what is assumed, fixed bidding doesn't mean that your cost per click will always equal your bid. What it means is Amazon's not going to lower your bid if they're saying like, hey, it doesn't, we're not thinking you're going to convert here. They're not going to pull you out of that ad auction. So even though you had $1 bid, you know how your cost per click often is lower than your bid. So even if you say had $1 bid at fixed bidding strategy, that doesn't mean you will pay $1 bid. You're still in auction, so you're still going to only pay 1 cent over what the next highest
bid is.
So I would say fixed bidding can be good if you really need visibility on something, because you won't always be taken out of, you don't have the potential to be taken out of ad auctions. That being said, there is a potential that just your average cost per clicks, because you're not being taken out of those other ad auctions, could be lower.
Right.
If you're using down only. So my rule of thumb is like, how much do I absolutely want to show up for these keywords? So if they're like your main keywords, then maybe that would make sense for you. Other thing is, like, if you're having a really, really hard time getting impressions on something, sometimes adding fixed bidding strategy to the campaign can help a little bit in those instances. So my rule of thumb is always like, how much am I willing to pay a little bit extra to make sure my ad is seen?
Yeah, that I would add to that simply that what I share for best practices with dynamic up and down is really it should only be used on campaigns that have already proven themselves, right? So if you've got a campaign that's got the right keywords, got the right bids, and you're getting low ACoS, then it's safer to use dynamic up and down, because these things are already working. So Amazon itself says you should only use dynamic bidding if you've got a proven campaign that sells it sells at least 50 products a week. So that's a general rule of thumb from Amazon itself. So you could follow that, but in general, only use it really for performing or branded keyword campaigns is another one that I like to say you can use dynamic up and down for, because really you should be the one that converts best for your own branded keywords. Yeah. So
we hope.
You hope. So it should be a safer bet to use dynamic up and down bidding for your own keywords, because then you're also making sure that you're actually protecting your branded keywords, because Amazon is going to adjust it up and down in case someone else is also using your keywords, which potentially they could be doing. All right. We've got time for just one more question. It's a follow-up from Chris Abadowski, who says, my next question was going to be about macros. What main ones do you set up?
Main one. So the way macros are is it's whatever, sky's the limit. So a lot. Okay, so I was going
Depends
to
on
say
how much time you
if
have.
you're going to get into bulk files and macros, what I would say is if you're already using bulk files and you already have something that like you do routinely, like if you're like, okay, I go into my bulk file, I apply these filters, I look at all of my keywords that have a cost above X amount, and I perform this action. If you have something that's really what I would recommend, because if you know how to program a macro, like that's amazing. I know enough to know where to change a couple things. Column references. I'm not a whiz. I would love to hole up for like 3 months and figure it out, maybe
Right.
someday. Right now, I know enough to know what is possible and how to tell somebody I want this, and then just have someone go do that for me. But that is a process, and you will have to have a back and forth. And typically with programmers, because they don't know like how all the formulas and the format works, they just know, oh, they said they wanted it in this column here, and they'll do that.
Right.
So you have to be able to tell them this is what I want. You can't hand someone off a bulk file who is unaware of the formatting and say, all right, I want to make a macro that's going to make all my bids that are above 30% lower 20. Like they don't. You have to say, hey, if this is applied, if you know how to write if then statements or
Right.
if statements, like that's basically what it is. Macros are just a way to do it automatically, write if statements. So if I would start, if you have a process that you perform routinely, go ahead. I mean, you can get some pretty decent people off of Fiverr, just share a sample file with them, say, I want this to happen in the automation.
Right.
And that's where I would start.
And just to follow up with that, since I know Chris is a user of Atomic, basically our rules do a lot of the things that
Yeah.
you would
If you already
design.
have a tool, honestly, that's
Yeah.
so much easier.
That's the whole point of a tool like Atomic, is so that you don't have to build out those custom sheets and build macros
Yeah.
and stuff, because that's called our algorithm, and it's called
So
the
if you
rules that
already
you
have
create.
if you already have a tool that's going to do all your bid automations for you, and it's doing a lot of keyword harvesting,
Yep.
one of the things that might be the most beneficial for you is to create like a campaign launcher, because you're going to have like launch campaigns, or you're going to have new products and you're going to need to set up campaigns. That honestly is a really great kind of like first tool if you want to dabble in building out a tool with automations and bulk files. You can say like, okay, I want this SKU, these keywords, this match type, these bids, click a button, done. Like that's doable. And that's maybe a little bit easier project than bids.
Yeah, it could be. So where can people find you?
Yeah, definitely. So I put out the most content on LinkedIn. So if you just want to be like, hey, what's she talking about? You can go check out LinkedIn. And then if you're interested in, hearing more about us as an agency, the best place is go to the website, which is jungler.com, JUNGLR.com.
Perfect. And just because it's coming up, are you going to be at our Sell and Scale Summit in Vegas? Is that on the
No.
radar?
I am so
Oh.
much of a homebody, to be honest. I didn't even go to Prosper last year. So for those of you who don't know, I got a lot going on with home life. I've got 6 kids, so like,
Yeah,
I just don't want to go anywhere.
I feel for you. I have 2 sisters that have 7 kids each, so yeah, I'm
They
very
have my
poor.
respect.
I'm very poor at Christmas. All right. Well, just because we were talking about it, Sell and Scale is our really seller
Yeah.
focused conference that we have coming up in Vegas. Elizabeth's going to miss out. It's going to be a great event. We're going to
I
Amazon
am.
Ads is
It
going to
looks
be there.
it
Walmart's
looks
going to be
amazing.
there. I think Google Ads is going to be there as well. So really, we're bringing together all these different e-commerce, basically giants, so that you guys can interact with them directly. We've got great keynote speakers. Neil Patel, Gary V. For any of you guys follow, all of his marketing content, he puts out a lot, and he's super well respected in the space, but not necessarily Amazon. So this is really a way for you guys to mix and mingle with these either large companies or large presences in the e-commerce space, all while mixing and networking with people that are at using Amazon, maybe dabbling in Walmart. And of course, there's always the parties. So, which we're having a really, really big one. I think Nellie's performing at our launch party. So For those of you that
Very
are
nice.
a little retro like me, you're gonna love that. So if you do want to join that that conference in Vegas, use this code right here, S3VM100, and it'll save you $100 off of that ticket. With that, next month's session is going to be with Mina Elias, and we have some exciting things to announce for that session. But thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us today and doing a follow-up to
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.